let's talk about leaders. In fact, let's talk about exceptionally good female leaders. Actually, in this instance, let's talk about one of my favourite female leaders, the fabulous Kim Scott. Now, for those of you that don't know, or maybe you haven't heard of Kim Scott, which is entirely possible, it's a big old world out there, she's a bit of a big thing when it comes to the world of leadership. You see, her career CV reads like one of the best in the business. She's been coached to executives as CEOs at Dropbox and Twitter, whilst also establishing an amazingly impressive career leading teams at both YouTube and Google. Not only that, she sat on the faculty of the world famous Apple University. In the world of Silicon Valley, she's literally been there and done that. Now, if you're not familiar with Silicon Valley, or maybe you live outside of the US, it's entirely possible that you won't have heard of Kim Scott. But that likelihood goes up somewhat due to the number of books that she's written in recent years. Author of 3 books now that all seem to centre around kicking ass in the world of business, she hit the high times in 2019, shortly after the publication of her first book, Radical Candor. Yes, it's the Americanized spelling of the word candor, but we'll look beyond that in this first instance. Radical Candor is even a great book because it has at its core a really simple message of how to have radically candid conversations with people. The clue's kind of in the title. Scott highlights how as humans, we're either ruthlessly blunt or vigorously empathetic, but it's actually the equal combination that makes for great conversations and for great feedback. She encourages through this book that leaders and managers master the art of both caring personally about the people we work for and the people that we work alongside, but also that we develop the ability to be direct and to the point with people about things that matter. That being said, that's not what this episode is about. We'll tackle that in a future episode. What I want to focus on today is a really small section of the book Radical Candor, a section where Scott talks about, as she calls it, how to build a kick-ass team. I told you, she really does like to talk about kicking ass. While this section of the book may be small in size, its impact is huge. The model she uses as the basis of her thinking, she describes as the difference between rock stars and superstars, something that we'll become very familiar with through the course of this video. At its core, however, it's all about performance potential, or rather, performance management. You see, as Scott explains in her book, but also in the amazing talks that she's done on this subject, business has traditionally viewed performance in a rather negative way. What I mean by that is we have a rather negative method for evaluating and assessing a person's contribution to a team. Typically, in teams in all corners of the world, leaders and managers assess their team members through a traditional 4-box: performance on one side of the metric and potential on the other. Those who score best of all, well, they score well both in performance, as in they're doing well in their job right now, but they also score well in potential, as in they have potential to achieve more or do more than the roles that they're currently holding in their careers. These are the people that leaders like to invest in heavily. These are the leaders that they like to consider their star performers in many respects, according to the traditional method, that is. Sticking with this traditional model, those that have potential yet aren't quite performing to the standard that leaders want, they typically get invested in by leaders. They're trained into becoming star performers. They're nourished into trying to become something bigger than they are today. While those that neither have potential nor perform in their roles today, well, they should, and in many cases are, eventually flushed out of a team or flushed out of a business altogether. But as Scott likes to highlight, this traditional model leaves a quadrant out on a limb. As Scott explains in her book, those that perform well in their roles today, but are perceived to hold no further potential beyond that role for the organisation or team, well, no one quite knows what to do with them. Enter Scott's rock stars and superstars. The base of Scott's thinking sits at the performance of a person in their role today. But rather than assess them against the future potential, she offers up an alternative that allows us to assess them against their desired growth trajectory. Note the phrase, their desired growth trajectory. It's about them, not us as leaders, as Scott likes to highlight and point out. Scott likes to refer to the difference between someone on a rapid growth trajectory versus a slower, more gradual growth trajectory as the difference between rock stars and superstars. Now, before you get all het up about the difference between Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, let me be clear. As Scott so diligently outlines in the talks that she's given on this subject, when we're referring to rock stars, she likes to give everyone the basics that she means rock-like, not rock star-like. She infers that a rock star is more like the Rock of Gibraltar rather than Ozzy Osbourne in this instance. Unmovable in nature, steady and steadfast. From a performance trajectory perspective, Scott's model acknowledges that people might want different things, and that different stages of people's lives might also determine the speed at which someone can invest in their career growth, or may limit the amount of aspiration that they can have at that particular time. And this doesn't make them any less critical or any less fundamental than anyone else on the team, as Scott likes to point out. There are people, like there are times in people's lives, where climbing the career ladder as fast as you possibly can is exactly what you want and what you're able to do. You chase down opportunity and exposure. But at the same time, there are people, like there are times in people's lives, where speed or career aspiration either isn't wanted or it's not possible in some instances. This is where a leader and a manager needs to know whether their people on their team are rock stars or superstars. It determines how you look at their contribution on a team, as well as how you support that contribution. Both are equally valuable, but both require very different things and desire very different things with that. Rock stars, as Scott outlines in her model, they're your solid and steady performers. They typically have a great deal of knowledge about the area of work that they operate in or the function that they provide a service in, and they are sought out as the go-to people for advice and guidance on things. They will provide you with a steady heartbeat to the team, diligently and consistently performing in their roles, but perfectly happy and content in their role and in their work. Their lack of pace and growth trajectory may be born out of general desire to do what they love, or because personal interests or requirements they hold outside of work stop them from doing anything else. They might have a hobby or an interest that they want to invest in, and which career growth would be seen to be stealing away from them. Or maybe they have commitments that ultimately mean that now is not the time to be investing in career growth and aspiration. Think parenthood, for example, or caring for aging parents or dependents. In contrast, superstars are your ladder climbers. They're hungry for growth, and they'll actively chase down opportunity to be both exposed to new things and to take on new responsibility. A superstar will actively seek out ways that they can grow and develop, as their ambition is about progressing and getting somewhere fast. They perform well, but they are hungry for more. Now, don't get me wrong. This is all still talking about one end of the performance evaluation spectrum. These are the people that you want on your team and who will offer you an immense value in being part of your team. But just like the traditional 4-box method that Scott encourages you to think beyond, as a leader and as a manager, you still need to be considering those who aren't performing so well. It's a leader's responsibility to take both rock stars and superstars and evaluate them against their performance expectations and against their objectives. If you can't get somebody, regardless of their preferred growth trajectory, to perform in their role through investment and support that you've given them, then you still have to do the responsible thing and you have to be prepared to let them go. Holding on to underperformers ultimately limits the potential of a whole team, and it's like accepting second best in the end. And you don't win anything from coming second best when it comes to performance. Ultimately, a leader needs to be clear on the difference between the rock stars on their team and the superstars on their team. Look after your rock stars by not pushing them for promotion. They aren't interested. Let them excel at the role that they're in and give them the space to do what they do best. Don't build a culture of promotion chasing. Make it normal and acceptable for people to be able to remain in the role that they're in. Reward performance fairly, be it ratings, pay, or even bonuses. Ensure your rock stars aren't being under-rewarded or undercompensated for the valuable contribution that they offer a team. Acknowledge their contribution. Award them guru status should you need. They have a star quality. It's just a different type of star in this instance. Ultimately, give them the respect that they have more than earned through their work. At the same time, look after your superstars. Do it by creating opportunities for them to shine. Expose them to projects and activities that are going to stretch their thinking and that will satisfy their appetite and thirst to grow. Don't try to put them in a box. They'll only rebel. Accept that they will push on doors and they will seek out more opportunity to expose to new things. Create clear pathways to a future role for them. One of the hardest things that you can do is accept that you won't keep a superstar long. Appreciate them while you have them, as they'll shortly be on to bigger and better things. You're either an enabler or you're a blocker of that, but they will be moving on. As a result, identify a successor. Don't hold them back. Remember, you have a team to think about, so always have one eye on the future of that team. Ultimately, give them support, provide them with a mentor or a coach, someone that can help them on the fast journey that they're trying to progress with. It's a simple model, and it can be truly team enhancing when it's applied well and when it's applied right. If you're wondering what to do with all of this, maybe start by just asking 3 questions of yourself. Do I know what each of my team's preferences are? Have I got a plan for maximizing the potential of each person on my team in line with their rockstar or superstar status? And number 3, do I spend regular time checking in with my team members to see if their personal circumstances have changed? Or if you want to go further, maybe consider this self-reflection also. Do you know where you sit on this framework today? Are you more rockstar or superstar in nature? How about your manager? Does your manager see you the same way as you see yourself? Have you done enough to educate them on your needs and wants for your career? Leading and managing a team, it requires you to do the tough stuff, like take action when people aren't performing. But at the same time, it also requires you to intimately know and understand the desires and preferences of those that you're responsible for on your team. Kim Scott's model, it gives the world a better way to look at your team, and that can only be a good thing. And I say rock on, Kim, for all of that. Feel free to check out more about her in the comments. I've provided a link to more information, and come back for episode 3. We'd love to see you.